Dear students, good morning and welcome to the course Foundations of Law, HOX 6061. My name is Pawan and I will be teaching you this course during the course of this term. So we'll be having some lectures in this regard. Now, unfortunately, because of this pandemic situation, we have internally decided that at least for the first year students, the uh, initial lectures, at least in September, should be done online. So now, since you are all here watching this video, I can safely presume that you have located the course in Moodle, and it's HOX 6061 Foundations of Law. I've also added my name next to that, Pawan Dutt, so that you can find it more easily. And all the information that is required for this course will be available online in Moodle. So we'll do this entire thing on Moodle for the time being. Let's see how October and November go. Maybe if things get better, if we get the go ahead, then we can have physical classes in the classrooms. Let's see how it goes. So foundations of law is a very basic subject, very basic. At the end of this course, you will not become lawyers. You'll just get a very rudimentary understanding of what the law is all about and the things it covers. So hopefully this will sort of make you more aware about what you will be studying during the course of the next 2 years or so for your bachelor studies, and then maybe even lay a foundation for your master studies in the future. So, well, now that we have dispensed with these little formalities, a bit about myself. I'm a lawyer and I've been practicing law since 1998. And I really like teaching young students, and it's always a pleasure to be in the classrooms and to sort of, imbibe your energy and sort of share my knowledge with you all. Unfortunately, we can't do that because of this coronavirus situation right now. But we have plenty of time to get to know each other and see your progress over the years. So if you come onto Moodle, there is this extended syllabus, and it will sort of explain basically everything that we need to know about this course, and hopefully it will answer all your questions as well. So this is a simple 3 credit course. Everything that is needed to be learned for this course is in the Moodle lecture notes. So you do not have to study anything from outside. Just stick to the Moodle notes and everything should be fine. It's quite a lengthy course, and a lot of material is available in Moodle, but I'll be there to sort of guide you through everything that is required. Now, couple of things to be careful about. There's the evaluation criteria, yes. Well, the fact is that this is a pass or fail course. So this is basically something quite simple, in the sense if you get 51 or above, you pass, and if you get less than 50, then you fail. So there will be 2 homework assignments, 15 marks each. So that comes to 30 marks. They will be put up in Moodle, and you have to upload your answers in Moodle. You will have almost 30 days to comply with these assignments, each of them. And trust me, if you can't do it in 1 month, I don't think you'll ever do it. So the deadlines are quite strict. If you miss those deadlines, then unfortunately I can't help you. Don't tell me that you were 2 seconds late. That doesn't matter, because you had 30 days to sort something out. Then there's a written exam. Usually it's in the classroom, but if we are not able to meet in the classroom for the written exam, then we can try to do it online as well. And so the breakup would be, the exam is 70 marks. The homework assignments, 2 of them are 30 marks each. 15 marks each, so 30 marks. So the total is 100 marks. And if you get 51, you pass. If you get less than that, you fail. All right. Now, of course, it can sometimes seem quite simplistic, but you have to be still careful and make sure that you comply with all the requirements, because you can sometimes get a nasty surprise and fail just because you did not bother to do the homework assignments on time, and then the exam questions were a bit more difficult than you assumed. So that's the syllabus. Acquaint yourself with it, and of course, all the basic information that is needed is available here, and also all the information regarding the various lecture topics is also here. So initially, at least for the first week, I mean, today we're just looking at a very basic introductory course lecture at this point of time. Usually, well, almost 80% of this class tends to be people from Finland, and then there are a sprinkling of people from other countries, including Estonia. And so at this point, we'll be talking in very general terms about the laws and the legal frameworks in different parts of the world. Again, something very basic, all right? So this is just a foundations of law course. At the end of this course, you're not a full-fledged lawyer, so don't go around getting into fights with people or legal arguments, because you still have a lot to learn, all right? I'll just be talking about very basic and general terms. So we'll be looking at the introduction and general definitions. Then, of course, there are basic aspects of the law, philosophy and classifications of law. Then we start looking at a comparative analysis. So we look at different types of legal systems around the world. Since most of you are from the European Union countries, so we'll be looking at the civil law system, which is also known as the Romano-Germanic system of law, which is prevalent in most countries in Europe. And then next after that, we look at English common law, which has its own differences. But make no mistake, both of them are products of Western legal jurisprudence and legal thought. So of course, they can't be entirely different. In fact, what you see nowadays is a mix and match of both of these systems. Then we look at some other legal systems as well, including Islamic law and some other laws in very general terms. Again, the idea is that as young lawyers or law students, you should know what happens in different parts of the world. And well, the nature of the work is such that there will be a lot of meeting across different cultures in the course of your career as lawyers, and so you will need to know more about the law as it prevails in different parts of the world. Some of you may not be interested in practicing law as lawyers, but rather you would be interested in doing some other work in which a legal background is helpful, maybe in an administrative capacity or as you wish. So again, hopefully some of these things come handy for you. Once we have completed the above, we look at the legal profession in detail, and of course there are a lot of ins and outs about it. So I hope to share my experiences about law and practicing law in the courts and other such procedures. Then we look at professional ethics, very, very important, because this is a learned profession and you're supposed to follow some basic ethics and etiquette. Of course, in this, I will make a difference between legal ethics and moral ethics. You have to be very careful about these two. You can't confuse them. So there are very important differences to keep in mind. Then we'll look at the nature of a legal dispute, and maybe I could try to draw upon my experience and try to take you through the process of how legal disputes work and how they start and how they proceed through a court of law. Then we go to criminal law, very interesting, very fascinating as a subject. This is just a foundation. Of course, you will learn criminal law in more detail later on, hopefully. Then there are some aspects about business law, and by that time, it'll be almost 12 weeks of lectures. So maybe we'll have to then sort of delimit and decide what comes for the exam and what doesn't come for the exam, so that you can have some peace of mind. Lastly, we'll try to do some revision and then just go over some other topics once again. And of course, if you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to ask me or contact me. I'm available on my email. I'm available through Moodle messaging. So you shouldn't have a problem getting across to me. Now, of course, this brings us to the issue of video lectures. Well, at least for September, I plan to make video lectures and put them up in Moodle so that you can follow the links. They will be on my YouTube channel, and so you can get onto the links straight away from Moodle. And hopefully, we can meet in the class later on in October or November, and so sort of, put a name to the face and stuff like that. Hopefully. But if that doesn't happen for any reason, and I understand many people are still worried about traveling or coming out of their comfort zones and coming to the university as such, then in that case, that's perfectly understandable at this point of time. I will be in the university at least for the first 2 weeks at the classrooms, just in case somebody misses these videos and the presentations in Moodle, then I'll be there to sort of guide you through the process in person as well, including tomorrow. All right. So, but anyways, as it states clearly in Moodle, September 2020 lectures will be online, and you need to check on the news forum for more updates. Everything that you need to know will be in Moodle, so hopefully there will be less confusion about all these things. So now that this is over, maybe we could spend some time looking at a general sort of thing about law. Now, I've had a lot of dealings with a lot of people in this profession, almost 20 plus years. In the past, we have had a lot of visiting guest lecturers from many interesting countries who would often drop by and give their versions of how the laws are in the United States, in the UK, in Germany, etc. Well, I guess this term, it's safe to assume that there won't be any such visits, unfortunately. But nonetheless, I'm here to sort of answer most of the questions. So, what does it take to be a successful lawyer? Well, I don't know. Successful in what context? It could mean different things to different people. But there are certain things that you need to be careful about. Maybe what is not taught to you in a law school, but what the life as a professional teaches you. So, well, these are the three main rules that I have always adhered to. I have discussed them with other lawyers, and they sort of agree that more or less these are important. So, learn how to bend the law without breaking the law. Yeah, that's rule number one. It's very important here because everything is not black and white. You have this big gray zone in the middle, and that's what lawyers exploit. All right, so this is how the world runs, and you need to bend sometimes, but of course you can't break the rules or the laws. If you break the law, then you're in serious trouble. Number two, don't get caught. Yeah, that's of course very important. And thirdly, if somebody has to go to prison, make sure it's the client and not you. All right. Now this is something that you will learn in life as you go on, and there are very fine lines, boundaries that you have to be careful about. This profession can be quite complicated sometimes. The lines can be a bit blurred. But let me just give you an example to sort of set the ball rolling. All right, let's say you're a lawyer and your client, somebody approaches you and says, well, I have 10 kilos of cocaine hidden in my mom's garden. You are my lawyer, give me the advice. The good advice in this case would be, well, you talk with the police, try to cut out a deal wherein through the public prosecutor, your client gets minimal sentencing and becomes an approver and gets all the protection that he or she deserves and can serve as a witness and help to bring down a bigger criminal syndicate, etc., etc., things like that. If this goes to a court of law, well, of course, that would be the line that you would follow, that your client, yes, has done something bad, has messed up, but your client wants to sort of make amends for her ways. And so, you're just trying to help the court and trying to help your client get a lesser sentencing or zero sentence. Yeah, that's a smart way to do things. The stupid way to do these things would be to dig up the cocaine from your client's mom's kitchen garden and to sell it in the market and then try to use that money to get your client out on bail or something. That's how lawyers get in super trouble. Now, of course, you may think that some of these examples are funny, but trust me, amazing stuff happens in real life, and so you have to be, of course, always on your toes as a lawyer. Now, maybe also we have to bear in mind that not everybody wants to practice law. sometimes having a law background or a knowledge of law can be very helpful, especially if you work in a company, in an office, in the HR department, in the labor department, wherever. I mean, knowledge of law is never harmful. And of course, if you can understand directives, regulations in the EU context, there's so much paperwork, so much of this legal framework. There's always a requirement for people with a law background to deal with such things. Even for professions which you would assume do not require a legal background. In fact, I've been surprised. I've known about people who apply for administrative positions in schools, for example, and then it's advisable for them to have a law background because there's so much regulatory paperwork that needs to be tackled and handled. Coming to other aspects, well, I know this one person, and she's a very good friend from Finland. And just to sort of give you an idea about how these things work out in mysterious ways, so she did her law studies in Tallinn and in our law school. And then later she went to Groningen, and then in the university there she studied public international law. And and criminal law to a certain extent. And so that's how things were. She came back to Helsinki, was doing some practice for some time, and then she saw an advertisement where the Finnish military wanted young lawyers for a foreign posting. And then so she applied for it, and they sent her to, I believe, Lebanon to work as a liaison for some UN-related work concerning the Finnish military. And of course, she even got her training before that, so she actually had a uniform on. And once that assignment got over after 2 years, she came back to Helsinki, and then they approached her once again, the Finnish military, and said, hey, we have this amazing opening in Kosovo, and number one, you are a soldier, number two, you are a woman, which is rare because, female peacekeepers in the United Nations and Kosovo are peace groups are very rare, so you can link up and bond with the women and the children who are suffering on the battlefields or in the refugee camps. So that's another plus. And thirdly, you have a legal background, so she got a job as a legal liaison between the Finnish military contingent and the European Union Kosovo peace contingent based over there, and they even promoted her to captain. So a lot of things can work out. And of course, the last time I met her, she was planning to study her PhD, and they were offering her a position in Brussels for some work dealing with liaison again in military affairs. And so things work out in different ways. All right. So the bottom line here is there's no such thing as a straight path. You just go through different paths. Talking about myself, I studied BSc with a major in chemistry, and after that I did law, and people were like, come on, that's stupid, right? Who studies science and then law? And then I was working in a law firm, and then the rules changed, and it became clear that if you want to practice intellectual property law, which was the area I was interested in, especially patent law, you need to have a science background. And then suddenly I was the only guy in the law firm with a science background. And so you can see how things work out over a period of time. And then, well, my master's studies was again in law. Now the PhD studies are in economic aspects of IP law. So this is obviously my specialization. So intellectual property law is what I really deal with, inside out. And teaching other subjects like foundations of law, property law come along quite easily as well. I also do teach IP and biotechnology, IP and competition law, and then special seminars on IP law, etc., etc. So a lot of things changing all the time. So again, you see, a lot of things can work out with a law degree in your belt. So you don't have to wonder what are you doing in a law class. A lot of people do sometimes drift into law and actually turn it around to become a good thing. So what are the outcomes of this course? Very, very important. You will not become a full-fledged lawyer after doing this 3 credit course. All right, that's very important to remember, to drill into your head. You see something going wrong, don't go to a cop and start fighting with that cop and then start saying that, oh, my lecturer Pavan Dutt told me this is the way the law is. No. All right, don't do all that stuff, please, for your sake and for my sake. What we will learn are different basic concepts of law, and of course there are differences in different parts of the world, but there are a lot of similarities. We'll also be dealing with procedural aspects of law. It's very important to keep in mind because law is all about procedure. If any of you have this mistaken notion that law is about truthfulness and right versus wrong, and unfortunately that's not how things work out all the time. Of course, you see, we want to live in a just and fair society, but you also have to remember that you go through a court system, through a legal system, where emphasis is on getting things moving. All right, you can't have a perfect legal system where nothing works. That's not helpful at all. Law is more about making sure that society runs and runs efficiently. Of course, it may not be 100% perfect, but the legal system is designed to eradicate as many problems as are possible humanely in a democratic, civilized society. So of course there are rights, then there are duties and obligations, and all of these play a very important role. In the course of your studies, you will also come across other courses like constitutional law. Then because you're in the European Union, then the European Union law plays a very important role over here. And you can already see, if you haven't noticed yet, that although there are different member states in the European Union, Estonia is different from Latvia or Finland or Germany or Italy or Greece or all of these places. Of course, they all have to work together, and this can be quite a problem because of rising nationalism, and different countries have different priorities for their own societies and their own people. So working together requires a blending of laws, and so that's what European Union laws are all about as well. Of course, you have this creeping influence from Brussels, which many right-wing parties, for example, fringe parties, do not appreciate in the European context. After all, this is the European Union. It is not the United States of Europe, unlike the US, which of course brings up some very important issues when you compare the two legal jurisdictions. So there will be a lot of emphasis on cross-cultural impact of the legal jurisdictions in different countries, because we can't ignore it. What the Americans do is relevant in the European Union, just as when EU taxes Google or Apple, then it becomes an issue for the United States. There are also issues when you deal with, for example, China or other countries, especially in the World Trade Organization context. So the whole system is based on laws, on a series of laws, and this is something that cannot really be avoided. So what's the essence of these video lectures? Well, I'll probably spend half an hour or so explaining the context of the notes. So you can use these lectures just as a sort of companion guide for the lecture notes for that particular day. So you read the lecture notes, you listen to my video lecture as well, and then you sort of get an understanding about what we are covering for this particular day for the lecture. So if you look at Foundations of Law, Lecture 1, just to sort of set the ball rolling, it starts off with a definition of law. Again, very difficult, but definitions are the most important aspect of law, and that's something that you cannot avoid. Definitions are the key because that's the only way to avoid a confusion. So what defines you as, for example, a citizen of Finland or Estonia or Germany or France? This definition is important because if you fit yourself within the parameters of this legal definition, then yes, you are a citizen of that country. But if you don't fit in that definition, then unfortunately you cannot become a citizen unless you follow a path through naturalization or whatever to become a citizen. All right, so what does it mean to be a citizen of Estonia? Well, having a passport, yes, is helpful, but of course, that's not the only criteria. It could be that you don't have a passport, but you're still a citizen of Estonia. So of course, there are pros and cons to all of these things. But the point I'm trying to make here is the centrality of the concept of a definition. Now, this definition in legal terms should be wide enough to cover whatever is required, but at the same time, not so wide that everybody can fit into it. So it needs to have some sort of boundary which makes it legally clear. So again, if you look at contracts, if you look at whatever, everything starts off with a legal definition. Unfortunately, what happens is society keeps on changing, and sometimes it's changing more rapidly. For example, with the advent of the internet, and this has caused disruption in different schemes. So you could have done a lot of things differently in the past, but of course now things are very different. In an analog world, things were very different to what you see now in a digital world. And so of course, the problem that arises is when you try to fit an old concept of the definition with newer issues that have arisen recently. So you try to take an old law and try to change it so that the new thing can fit into the old definition. That's where problems arise, and that's where you have to be careful about. So law definitions as such generally, and the definition of law again is quite wide in that sense. So it could be a binding custom or practice of a community, and of course something which sort of becomes entrenched over a period of time, becomes formally accepted, and then of course practices, rules, and the legal control brought about by legal institutions. So this can be the definition of law, and this can of course always get you in trouble sometimes. So for example, if you look at Nazi Germany's history, well, Hitler became the Führer, the dictator, through legal means, right? I mean, he entered parliament, he got the election vote, and then based on the powers that he had, he went around becoming the chancellor and changing all the rules so that everything was legally done. Of course, that didn't help the Nazi party during the Nuremberg trials, because what you think may be legally done, lawfully done, may still be ultra vires some unwritten rules or laws, and this can of course cause a lot of problems. So in the context of our nation states nowadays, you have the constitution, that's the main thing, and then there are other laws that come in the hierarchy, guidelines, and things like that. And now in the European Union context, you have the Treaty for the Functioning of the European Union on top, then the Estonian, Finnish, German constitutions, and then you have more down below, the various laws in those countries, family laws and things. Then you have administrative rules and procedural aspects. So all of them come in a hierarchy over here. And of course, law would be a compliance with all of these things. So you could have a situation where you have a law passed in, let's say, Finland, which is, I'm saying more about Finland because, again, 90% of the class tends to be Finnish. But this would be applicable to almost all member states in that context. So you may have a law in Finland or in any other country which specifies that, well, this is how it is, and if you break this part, you are a criminal. And then you have to then understand whether this law complies with the constitution of your country. And more importantly now, does it comply with the Treaty for the Functioning of the European Union? And of course, at the national state, you also have World Trade Organization treaties and all of these things in the United Nations. So there are public international law, private international law aspects, all of these things which I hope to touch upon in due course. So the outline of various issues is here that we will be looking at. And so that's more or less what I was hoping to deal with today. Again, first lecture. I don't want to scare you off. I just want to welcome you to the course and make you aware of the fact that we'll be learning a lot of different things over here today and during the course of this lecture series. So this will well cover a whole gamut of laws and regulations and outlines of various things, some of which may make sense, some which may not make sense. Unfortunately, I can't show you videos in this video, but otherwise in the classroom, I like to use audio visual context to sort of give a more definite meaning about what things are. Well, we'll try to improvise. I'll try to come up with ways to keep you interested in this. Um, One feedback I often get from the students since the past 10 years that I've been giving this course is, I don't know, is it a good sign or a bad sign, but they say that they find the examples that I give to be very funny. Well, I certainly hope that cocaine example I gave earlier on wasn't so much as funny as thoughtful, all right? Because these are just examples that I give you. Sometimes they can be funny, sometimes they're more serious, but these examples can really help to sort of impress upon you the fact that, not everything is crystal clear, and you have to be very careful about understanding that there is black, there is white, and then there is this huge zone in the middle, the gray zone, and that's what as a lawyer you have to exploit or deal with. All right, so thank you for your time, and I hope we can all meet in the classroom in October or later on, and I really look forward to continuing this course and the lectures with you. So wherever you are, whichever part of the world, let's try to continue this course through Moodle. And then of course, we also have to figure out the exam schedule. Usually we have the exam after the courses or the lectures are over. But because many students in the past always had this thing that they want to travel abroad for the new year or something, there was a big group of students who had this crazy tradition of celebrating New Year in Colombia or Belize or the southern hemisphere, and so they would insist that exam should be in December and maybe a possibility to catch up in January with the exam as a re-exam. I don't know how people will be traveling anymore because of this pandemic and the coronavirus. But anyways, that's something we will keep in mind and discuss. We also have to see whether the exams will be in writing in the classroom, physically being present in the classroom, or will they be online. Too many open questions at this point of time, not so many answers. So my advice to you would be, don't worry, be happy, relax, and we'll figure it out and we'll go through this. All right. So just make sure you're on Moodle, make sure that you follow all the requirements, follow all the instructions, keep up to date with whatever the requirements are, and keep on checking my YouTube videos for more guidance about this topic. All right. So thank you for your time and have a nice day. Goodbye.